Welcome to the Huddle Up Podcast, your go-to show for all things Broncos.
Let that breathe a little bit. Man, that music just psychs me up, dog. What's good, you guys? Broncos country. Welcome into the Huddle Up Podcast, presented, of course, by Mile High Huddle. It's time to drop some knowledge. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, Scout Media, CBS Sports Digital. With me is Will Keys, editor and, of course, writer at Mile High Huddle. Will, dude, we are podcasting together.
Yeah, it's been a few months, so I'm glad to be back. Glad to be back on the Mile High Huddle podcast network. And
dude, you should tell people where you've been. Like, so here's what's up. People who are following the podcast when we were doing Locked On Broncos, I had Will on for an episode, and then he left the motherland. He left the homeland. He crossed the pond. Tell our listeners what you were up to.
Yeah, so I spent the last 4 months studying in Ireland. So as it pertains to football, I still watch football there. Not soccer, of course, the real football. But the real struggle with that was staying up late to watch the playoff games. I dozed off a little bit during the Steelers-Chiefs playoff game. That was, the 6 field goals did Andy Reid and Alex Smith in. Mm-hmm. Not a super exciting game, so I think you could understand why I had a tough time staying awake.
Yeah,
but it's challenging being an NFL fan in Europe. It definitely is. So I'm glad to be back for that, at least.
I can imagine. And one of the challenging things, because, of course, Will is a key component to what we do at Mile High Huddle as an editor, and one of the obstacles we had was the time difference, because news would break or something like that and it'd be like, oh, we got to cover this, and if I was busy or if I was tied up on something, the way it would work normally when we're both in, of course, the US of A, one of us are going to be able to get to it, but if a news article or a new piece of news broke at like 3 p.m. Mountain Time here,
that's rough.
That's late for Will. He might already be in the sack, catching some Z's. So I'm glad to have you back, brother, and I'm glad to have you on the podcast. I'm looking forward to it.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Now listen up. We're here, Huddle Up, to give you a deep dive on your favorite team, the Denver Broncos, and we need your help. Right now, we are not a daily podcast, but we do check in with you a couple times per week without fail, whether it's myself, whether it's going to be Will, whether it's going to be Nick and Carl, Luke from time to time as well. But take a second and rate the show on iTunes, or if you're on Android, rate the show on Stitcher. If you have the time, take a second and leave a comment. There are 2 very important things that can really help us. And, of course, make sure you're following the show on Twitter at huddleup_MHH. And if you appreciate what we're doing here, retweet the episodes on Twitter, share them out on Facebook. And I'm sure most of you already are subscribing to Huddle Up on iTunes and Stitcher if you're Android users. But if you're not, take care of that. The show can also be found on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iHeart, CastBox, and it's even now on YouTube. We're pretty much everywhere you need us to be in order to consume the show and tune in, no matter which operating system you might be using. Now, this is considered to be the dead time on the NFL calendar, but Phase 3 of OTAs just kicked off, training camps on the horizon, and we're going to be working furiously to bring you consistent content, and you're not going to want to miss a single episode. So Will and I wanted to get together today to talk about the Broncos officially kicking off Phase 3 of their offseason training program. Now, what does that mean, Phase 3? Basically, after doing a lot of conditioning stuff, wellness and diet, weight room lifting, meeting room stuff, the Broncos finally get to take to the field together as a team, and that includes the veterans and all the rookies. And really, it's our first chance to see how the 2017 Broncos are taking shape with all 90 guys, or as close to it as they are right now. I'm not even sure if they're quite at 90. But in Phase 3, here's how it works. The teams can run 11-on-11 and 7-on-7 drills, but without contact. There's no contact, of course, until training camp. And that was a little change to the way of life in the NFL that happened to the collective bargaining agreement following, I should say, the 2011 lockout. And it's kind of a double-edged sword because back in the day, up until that point, teams could organize hitting practices during the off season. But now there, of course, is no contact until training camp. And I've heard dudes, old lunch pill, hard-nosed guys, old school guys like Mike Ditka, disparage the modern approach, saying that it's making guys soft. And it's interesting because you talk about making guys soft. We see how that trickles down, especially to the offensive line. And really in the trenches, Will, where they're not allowed to contact and hit, it just changes. It changes the development and how guys get up to speed. The O-line guys, they're not even able to get close to getting into a groove until really the dog days of training camp. And for some teams, that lack of cohesiveness and being in the zone, it kind of ends up running into the regular season. And, Will, that's how we see so many teams struggle in the running game and pass protection. It just takes time because of the way the teams do it nowadays.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point. Like, if you think back to the start of the 2015 season, and maybe this was a part of installing the Kubiak offense for the first time, but the Broncos couldn't run the ball against the Ravens and the Chiefs. They just had to rely on either no offense and let the defense win it for you, like in the Ravens game, or milk Peyton Manning for his final 3-touchdown game like he did against the Chiefs.
Yep.
But I think moving ahead to 2017, it is kind of frustrating. You get where they're coming from in terms of player safety, and that's obviously priority number one.
Yep. And
that was a big part of the collective bargaining agreement back in 2011. But there are obviously some cons that come along with it. And one of them is it's just frustrating that you don't really know what you have in your rookie class until you get around to training camp. I mean, you can't. Like, guys just look differently in pads versus in shorts, and then in 7-and-7 versus when you're actually hitting guys. And, of course, the Broncos took a left tackle in the draft this year. They took Garrett Bowles at 20.
Yep.
And we don't really know what he's going to be or if they made the right choice until – I mean, you don't know for sure until at least 3 years down the road.
Yep.
But you don't have really even any sort of inkling until August, until training camp, until the preseason, when he can actually engage and hit guys and work on that technique in the using live reps with live bullets.
A guy like Bowles, bro, this is a guy who, you talk about the depth chart and the competition. Donald Stevenson, Ty Sambrailo, they're all duking it out for that. Well, and also I guess we got to throw in there Menelik Watson as well. But, Garrett Bowles is a guy who thrives on physicality, and how's he supposed to show that without hitting?
Yeah, that's his game. Literally, the Broncos drafted him because he's just a mean, tough dude.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all he does. If he can cut down on the holding penalties, and really the Broncos just let him get into guys and hit guys in the second level, then it's a good pick. But like I was saying, we don't know yet.
Yep.
We won't know until a few months, and that's kind of the worst part about this, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we jump into some of the happenings from Tuesday's practice session and some of the remarks that came out of Dove Valley, let's talk about the rule change the NFL owners handed down that kind of broke on Tuesday. Now, in the past, there have been always two waves of roster cuts, roster cut downs leading up to the regular season. There's the cut down from 90 guys to 75. And then following the fourth and final preseason game, there's the cut down from 75 to the final 53-man roster. Now, the fat cat NFL owners have changed the game. Now, there's going to be just one cut down from 90 to 53, and it'll be after the fourth preseason game. But how will that affect things for the Broncos? Here's what Vance Joseph had to say about it on Tuesday.
I like it. I like it because that fourth game becomes a better game, okay? And that fourth game is always tough because you're playing some valuable players. Even though they're backup players, they're playing 55 snaps of football and playing special teams for you. So that's dangerous. You can lose a valuable player, in that fourth game. But now you got the entire roster. And, for a young guy who's trying to make his way as a practice squad player, right, he gets one more chance to actually get game reps, not have 4 or 5 reps, but have, maybe 20, 25 reps in a game. So it's good for all parties, in my opinion.
Now, Will, Joseph makes some excellent points there. I mean, this new rule really shapes up that final preseason game to be very meaningful, and it's going to be fun to cover, and it's interesting, more interesting and compelling for fans, but it also minimizes the risk of injury for the tier 1 and the tier 2, basically your first and second string guys, mostly your second string guys, from getting hurt. And it also buys the fringe guys, the guys that are really pushing for a roster spot at the bottom, that extra opportunity to make a case for themselves, and not just a case to the Broncos, but putting that tape, getting that good tape up for the entire NFL.
Yeah, like you said about the 4th preseason game, it does become more interesting and more compelling, just because, they usually have that 4th preseason game in Arizona, or the Cardinals come to Denver. And I think what I took away from it last year was that, Jordan Taylor is really good, but I think we knew that by then.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a huge revelation. And I think now, like, you wanted to see guys, like, you wanted to see, okay, is Mose Frazier for real? Mm-hmm. Is Duron Neal or is Braylon Addison a good returner? Or, how do these linebackers shake out? How do they find their hierarchy? And I think that's one of the benefits of this. But I'm wondering kind of if the teams are going to stick to this rule, and are they actually going to keep 90 up until the deadline, or are they going to just cut as they go and kind of
right?
Because they can really cut whoever they want at any time
at any
the preseason.
Yeah.
Like Kyle Shanahan cut KD Cannon, the wide receiver from Baylor, like on the first day that he was in the facility.
That's some 8-8 bullshit.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Was it 7-9? I forget what the catchphrase was from old Jeff Fisher.
7-9. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, it's too bad we don't have Jeff Fisher again on Hard Knocks.
Oh yeah,
what a character. But teams can really get rid of whoever they want whenever they want, especially with the undrafted guys, because they don't make any money and it's not going to hurt the teams.
Yeah.
But so I'm I guess wondering whether it will actually be 90 guys in the last game, because you have your starters that aren't going to play, and I assume that there's going to be that second tier that might have played previously, but now they're kind of categorized into, well, we're not going to cut them, and I know we might not play them in week 1 of the regular season, but we mostly note we have, right. So we're going to let these last wave of players kind of make their final case.
Yeah.
So I think that's what the 4th preseason game turns into from now on.
Yeah, and it's I mean, if anything, these, coaches and the teams themselves, they're going to be selfish, and one of the ways that's going to take shape or reveal itself is, again, and you heard it in Joseph's remarks there, is they want to protect their key players, especially the starters and the key backups, from risking too much for a meaningless exhibition game. And so keeping those extra guys on the roster up until they, basically have no choice and have to make the cuts. Honestly, that's how I think it'll shake out, just because, again, they just want to protect their assets as best they can. And that, I don't think it's going to change that 3rd preseason game from being kind of the dress rehearsal for the starters, but it's just going to make that 4th game that much more compelling. The stakes are going to be that much higher, and just more guys getting on the field and getting opportunities to ply their wares and show the NFL what they have to offer.
Yeah, the NFL has really wanted to tinker with the preseason for a while, because nobody likes it. Nobody likes 4 weeks of having to watch meaningless football. It's exciting, maybe the first week when you really want to see anything. You've
right.
gone months without football, and you'll take like a Jaguars Titans preseason 4th quarter.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you'll be like, well, it's better than what I've been watching.
Mm-hmm.
But by the 4th week, you're really done with it. And so I guess this makes it a little more worth watching, but we don't know until we see it, and it probably won't be.
Well, and another rule change, and this is one that also took, it was a long time coming, was the owners changing up the rules on celebrations after touchdowns. Now, real quick, here's what Coach Joseph had to say about that particular rule change real quick.
I like it. It's a hard league, and scoring a touchdown is hard in this league, and let's allow them to have fun. Why not? It hurts no one. It can go too far sometimes, but in my opinion, it's part of the game. Players want to celebrate when they score. It's hard to score in this league.
Now, the NFL, I think, it's safe to say, has earned its no fun league moniker. Let these guys celebrate in the end zone because, as Joseph points out there, dagnabbit, it's not easy to hit pay dirt in the NFL. Let them have their fun.
It's really not easy, but when I was thinking about this, it strikes me as Commissioner Roger Goodell trying to get back into the good graces of the fans.
He's tired of all those boos on draft day.
Yeah, and for good reason. But I think it's kind of Goodell trying to be the cool stepdad to the NFL fans, and he's not really going to fix what we want to be fixed, but he's going to give us back our celebrations, and so it's like getting the stepkids, a new puppy.
It's like,
and
hey,
it's
son,
exciting.
You want to take the car out tonight on Friday night? You want to take the touchdown?
Exactly, and it's exciting for the first 10 minutes, but you realize it's just covering up the deeper problems, which are player safety and contractual issues with players.
Yep.
So it's nice to have celebrations back, and it's nice that Emmanuel Sanders can throw a pitch after scoring a touchdown against the Titans without earning a 15-yard flag.
True.
But the fact of the matter is they never should have been outlawed anyway because it's a game and they're here to to have fun.
I mean, remember the days of Terrell Owens, brother? I mean, I can even remember like Joe Horn. You got guys carrying Sharpies in their sock. I mean, what's wrong with that? Nothing.
No, there really isn't anything. And I loved, of course, the clip of Randy Moss scoring a touchdown against the Green Bay Packers and proceeding to moon the crowd at Lambeau with Joe Buck covering his bases with the NFL and calling it a disgraceful act. Right, but I'm glad we have that back now, and I hope Joe Buck has learned his lesson.
Well, let's get to some Broncos talk here specifically, get down to the nitty-gritty, and of course, the number one storyline that is going to have all of Broncos country completely enthralled throughout the summer, the quarterback competition. And, it's not exactly a surprise or earth-shattering news, but it was interesting to learn for sure how the playing time with the first-team offense is going to be divided up between Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch. Now, Siemian, of course, who started 14 games for the Broncos last year, he started off day one on Tuesday of Phase 3 with the ones. Now, Lynch saw a little time too, but Siemian had the lion's share. Here's exactly, moving forward through OTAs, how Coach Joseph explained the playing time with the ones is going to shake out.
It's going to be day by day, okay? Today it was Trevor's turn to be with the first unit. Tomorrow it'll be Paxton, so it'll be day by day. It's 10 OTAs, so it'll be 5 and 5. Very even.
Now again, Will, we've heard all offseason that this was going to be a fair, it was going to be an open competition between Siemian and Lynch. So it's not much of a surprise to learn that they're going to each get 5 practices to rep with the ones. But it does give us kind of a further glimpse into how Vance Joseph is going to manage the situation and kind of just his management leadership style. And so far, honestly, he seems to be a man of his word.
Yeah, I think he is. But I think one of the big things you want to see from this quarterback competition that we've been talking up since the end of the season, and it's really a bit of a continuation from the competition last year between Siemian, Sanchez, and Lynch. You just want to see a fair competition. You don't want to see the scales tipped in any of their favor.
Yeah.
We've been hearing that if it's close or if Lynch is close, then he should start because he was the first round draft pick, which I don't know if that's necessarily the right thing to do. I get that he was a first round draft pick and you don't want to look stupid, especially the quarterback, and you have to play him eventually to recoup that investment because it is a big investment. They traded up for him. They traded up from I think 31 down with the Seahawks to take him, and you can't not play him. But at this point, he hasn't really given us much to get excited about other than the physical skills.
Right.
And he absolutely does have the superior skill set to Trevor Siemian, but it hasn't translated to much so far. And I think OTAs will tell us a little bit about where he is right now as opposed to at the end of the 2016 regular season.
Yeah, I mean, you know how I feel about this, and listeners, of course, you know as well. If you've been paying attention to, just the last episode that I published, it was just a solo episode, me just kind of going through some stuff. But, I basically view that at this time, in 2017 for the Broncos and Paxton Lynch, it's basically 2017 or bust. And what I mean by that is that the Broncos don't have a lot of choice if they want Lynch to eventually be the long-term answer at quarterback. They got to try and find a way without, tanking it or selling anybody short of getting Lynch on the field. Because if you think about it, you look at Trevor Siemian. So last year he wins the starting job, earns the love, earns the respect of the locker room. You see him win it again, and if knock on wood, he goes on to start all 16 games in 2017, and if the Broncos are even marginally successful, you're going to go into a third offseason in a row with an open competition at quarterback when the team is, the players are invested in Trevor. He's sunk some roots by that point. He already has, and that's one of the obstacles Lynch has to overcome. But I just see it really, without taking this podcast off track, I just see it as, I am in that camp where I do think that if it is close, let's just say all things being equal, these guys are 50-50 all the way down to the wire, and now the coaches have to really make a tough decision because not one guy, even if they've both been impressive, have separated from the other. I think the team's going to go with Lynch because they're looking for any reason, any form of confidence to get him out on the field come what may.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely fair. If it is close at the end of at the end of training camp, and they do give it to Lynch, that does make sense because Lynch has more room to grow, and I don't think anybody would argue, even the biggest Trevor Siemian supporters wouldn't argue that Lynch has the higher ceiling. And I wouldn't say that we know who Trevor Siemian is right now because that's not fair to say about any player after one season, but Paxton Lynch definitely does have the higher upside.
Yep.
But we don't know until he starts significant amounts of the season.
He's got to translate it. Yep, there's no doubt about it. And we'll see that a little bit more in detail at least once we get into the preseason and see him in some action against competition. And this is another topic, just to move on a little bit, that I wrote about a story at milehighhuddle.com. I think it was last week, might have been the week before, but when Coach Joseph first talked about specifically what he's looking for in his starting quarterback. And really the big takeaway was it came down to decision-making. But again, following practice, Joseph was asked the obligatory question about what his QB requirements are and how that's going to shape up with this competition. Here's what he said real quick.
All of the above. Decision-making, accuracy, command of the huddle, consistency. That's always key with quarterback play. So far so good. It's the first day. Both guys were engaged. So it was a good day.
Now, honestly, Will, everybody I talked to on Tuesday were pretty consistent on Siemian and Lynch for the most part. Both guys had a few moments of kind of getting up to speed in a new offense and all that. A new season, I guess you could say, too. But ultimately, they both they both impressed. They both, had their moments. Now, this is a topic that I've waxed poetic on, the whole decision-making aspect that Joseph is talking about. Now, a lot of guys, fans, media people, analysts, automatically assume that Siemian has the edge in such an arena as far as decision-making. I beg to differ on that topic, but what's your take on that, Will?
Well, I would probably beg to differ with you begging to differ on that topic in the first place. But it sounds like the quarterback that Vance Joseph was describing fits the bill with Trevor Siemian a little bit more than Lynch, aside from command of the huddle, because I think both guys have a pretty good handle on that, and they're both, from what we've seen, pretty good teammates as well, and they're well liked by the locker room. But you think about decision making, and Trevor Siemian probably has the upper hand right now. Consistency, I think you'd also give to Trevor Siemian at the moment, and accuracy too. You can't say that at this point at least, that Paxton Lynch is a more accurate quarterback from what we saw, especially in the Atlanta game and the last time we saw him in the Jacksonville game.
Basically, based on everything we know right now.
Right. So Vance Joseph doesn't really bring up, well, I want a quarterback that has a rocket arm, or I want a quarterback that's hyper athletic and can get outside the pocket and move, or I want a quarterback that's 6'7" and has a goatee and went to Memphis.
Yeah, right. Very tall.
Yeah, he's not giving us the Lynch archetype, and he's not necessarily giving us the Trevor Siemian archetype either. He's not saying, well, I want someone who is a real student of the game, all the cliches.
Right.
But he doesn't necessarily – I don't think the offense really requires a Paxton Lynch type. And that's not to say that he's not a fit in the offense. Either quarterback has the opportunity ahead of him, and I don't think one of them has a significant advantage over the other in terms of fitting the offense, or the coach wants this type of player versus the other. So I think all things considered, that would give us a fairly even competition during camp.
See, and I understand where people are coming from, that you automatically assume that gives Siemian the upper hand, and ultimately perhaps it does. My thing on that is, I go back when it comes to decision making and all of that, is that it's not just always a matter of knowing where to go with the ball, or always, protecting it, not throwing into double coverage and all that. A lot of it is just knowing situational football, knowing when to, look, it's 3rd and 7, and they're playing off coverage. They're giving me the underneath, and sometimes I have to have the stones to challenge the defense, because I can dump it off to Jordan Norwood on a 3-yard under route, like a curl or a crossing pattern or something like that, and hope he can break free and pick up the first down. But all empirical evidence for the 14 games leading up to this point has suggested to me that he's probably going to get tackled 2 yards shy of the sticks. And just little things like that is, in the NFL, what really, all these things he talks about, as you say, it's not just about having a rocket arm, hyper athleticism, being tall, getting outside the pocket. Most of what it really takes to succeed in the NFL as a quarterback comes down to the things that he described, talking about having consistency, accuracy, decision-making, command of the huddle. You've got to be able to put all those things together. And right now, from what we know, Trevor Siemian is the closest thing to that, because we saw him for 14 games last year. Lynch we only saw for 2 and some change. So I understand why people might think Siemian has the advantage, but what I'm saying up to this point is, from the things I've heard of Lynch, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this topic here in just a minute, a little bit later in the show, but I'm just saying, don't sleep on Lynch quite yet. Don't sell him short.
Right, and if you look at the Mike McCoy offenses of the past, it doesn't really require a certain type of quarterback in terms of physical stature or skill set, because Mike McCoy made it work with Kyle Orton to some extent, and then he made it work with Tim Tebow, and those two are polar opposites on the quarterback spectrum, to say the least, probably personality-wise as well. But and then he made it work with Peyton Manning for a year, and he got a really, really good year out of Peyton Manning. Yep. And then when he moved on to San Diego, he got the best play out of Phillip Rivers maybe in his career, at least in the last 5 years. But that doesn't mean that, okay, the Mike McCoy offense requires Lynch's skill set, or it requires Siemian's skill set. But like you said, the experience and the things that you can only learn through live reps and having played nearly a full season, it does benefit Siemian for now, I think.
Yeah, the experience is certainly a leg up, no matter which way you cut it. Anything in life. If you've got some experience in it compared to someone with zero or less experience than you, that's probably going to give you a little bit of a leg up. But we'll see how it shakes out. Another revelation that came out of Tuesday's practice revolved around the left tackle position. Garrett Bowles, Denver's first-round draft choice, as we talked about just a few minutes ago, is actually going to start out as the second-team left tackle, with Donald Stevenson running with the ones for now. Coach Joseph was asked whether he'll take the same approach with the left tackle competition that he's taken with the quarterbacks, rotating days with the ones. But before Will and I break this down, here's what Coach Joseph had to say about it.
I'm not sure. It's a different deal there. Obviously we've drafted Bowles in the first round, but he's got to earn his place. And Stevenson's been here every day between phase 1 and phase 2. He's a veteran player. He played for us last year. So as far as the starter right now, it's Stevenson with Bowles, and we also work in Ty Sambrello there. So it's 3 guys working the left tackle position.
Now, also, I didn't want to play the clip, but Joseph went on to say that Bowles, quote, has to earn his way. That starts with the classroom and knowing what to do, then transferring from the classroom to the field. He's no different than Carlos Henderson or DeMarcus Walker. He's a rookie. He has to earn his way, close quote. To me, this is a good thing, Will. The Broncos, let's face it, they're not the Cleveland Browns where they're absolutely knee-deep in a rebuild, where they've reloaded the roster to have to play the rookies, whether the veterans, whether they're keeping the veterans happy or not. The Broncos rookie class, no matter what round they were drafted, they're going to have to earn the opportunity to start, and it's going to be no different for Garrett Bowles. It's only going to make him better.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, and this comes from drafting for need a little bit, and especially drafting for more of a gaping black hole, which is kind of what the Broncos did when they took Garrett Bowles to fill the left tackle spot.
Yep, big need.
They're not going to give him a lot of time to develop before they put him in there. It's kind of, unless he's just an abject disaster right away, and I don't think he's going to be, but that means he's going to have to step in week 1 and assume the position in terms of, learning the various protections, meshing with the guys around him, and being a reliable pass blocker, along with what I think his strength is, which is more of a run blocker. Yep. But he's got to be a good, well-rounded tackle from day one, and I think he should be. But everything I think Vance Joseph says until then is kind of lip service, because you don't expect him to play Donald Stevenson or Ty Sambrello ahead of him, especially when you spent the first-round pick on him at 20. So, you could maybe picture Sambrello taking a few snaps there in case of injury, or, like I said, if Bowles is just a complete disaster, which doesn't seem too likely. Mm-hmm. But he's got remember, of course, in 2015, Sambrello started the year at left tackle before he got hurt, and he did a fairly good job.
Till he had that shoulder.
Yeah, right. And Peyton Manning kind of covers up a lot of the holes in the offensive line with how well he gets them into position and how quickly he gets rid of the ball. But if worse comes to worse, I think he or Stevenson could hold down the fort for a little bit, but expect it to be Bowles from day one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and we just got to hope that Garrett Bowles and Derek Wolfe, in the meantime, don't murder each other. And I don't think that's going to be too much of a risk until they start the contact in late July. But anyway, another interesting element from Tuesday had to do with Denver's 2 injured draft picks. I thought this was very intriguing. 5th-round tight end Jake Butt and Mr. Irrelevant himself, quarterback Chad Kelly. Now, Butt is recovering from an ACL. Kelly's recouping from a knee as well and has a wrist and a thumb injury. Both were present. Both were on the practice field on Tuesday when the offense was in the huddle, calling out plays, going through it. Butt and Kelly were both in there listening and observing. Here's what Coach Joseph had to say about it. And in his response here, he's speaking specifically about Butt.
It helps a lot because for a rookie in this league, knowing what to do is half the battle. So once he's healthy and he's getting full live reps, it's going to obviously pay dividends. That he's heard these plays over and over again entire offseason.
Now, what I found interesting, Will, and this is something that to piggyback a little bit on something D-Mac of 104.3 The Fan talked about on Tuesday as well, is that it's just not something that you see often, to be honest. 2 late-round rookies, both recovering from injury, whose prognosis at best puts them on the field in action sometime in August, in the huddle, engaged, listening to the play calls. But both guys could use as many mental reps as they can get. And I think, again, Will, this kind of goes to show us and give us another little window into Vance Joseph's approach as a coach.
Yeah, I like the idea of it. There's really no downside to having them get the mental reps. And I think you see it, especially for a veteran player, but it just happens to be that they're both rookies. And when a player is sidelined during the middle of the season or in training camp, they will get those mental reps. And it shouldn't be any different if they're coming in from college and they haven't gotten into a huddle for real. But I like the idea for both of it, especially Chad Kelly, because I think the less downtime for him, the better. And you want to keep a guy like him engaged and a part of the team.
Yep.
I think that's always a good idea with someone who has a few character concerns. I think
volatility, to say the least.
To say the least, of course. And it'll help with Jake Butt as well, to I think a lesser degree. But I think he's got a pretty high football acumen, and he'll be fine. But hopefully they're both back, like you said, by August.
Yep.
But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them take a more conservative approach with Chad Kelly, just because you don't expect him to see the field, whether he's healthy or not, because of course you have the two quarterbacks ahead of him who are competing.
The question, though, Will, is this, and I've heard it kicked around a little bit with Kelly. I don't want to get too off track here, but just a quick aside is that, obviously if Chad Kelly were healthy leading into this draft, I think most people, even those who don't quite believe in him in the way some do, I don't think he would have got past round 4 at the latest, right? And so you get him to August, and if he's not quite up to speed, then you want to waive him, and then, or I guess you could just put him on injured reserve as well if he's not up to speed. But if they don't put him on injured reserve, what I've heard is that they're not wanting to risk putting him on waivers and then trying to sneak him onto the practice squad, because by that point he's probably going to be far enough along in his development that he's going to all of a sudden become that much more attractive to teams. So the question is, for the Broncos, if they get to that point, is they're going to have to decide if they want to, like they did with Trevor Siemian in 2015, rather than, he wasn't 100%, he was still recovering from an ACL himself, but they still chose to keep him on the active roster through the entire season rather than risk. They chose not to put him on IR, and they didn't want to risk putting him through waivers because they valued his long-term potential. And it'll be interesting to see how that same type of scenario could shake out for Chad Kelly if he's able to get on the field at all in August.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most likely scenario if they don't put him in on IR, that he does make the 53-man roster, and he's usually a game day inactive unless one of the other quarterbacks is hurt. But I do think you did make a good point. I don't think he does make it through most waivers, especially if he goes through a full offseason without any issues.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, without, first of all, the injuries, and then on top of that, the character concerns. He got kicked off of Clemson. He spent a year in Scuba, Mississippi.
Last chance you, y'all.
Last chance you, the great Netflix series.
Yep.
And he had his run-ins with the bouncer at a certain Buffalo nightclub.
Don't make me spray y'all with my AK.
Yeah, not exactly what you want to hear from the face of the franchise.
He claims it's a lie.
The guy leading your offense.
He claims that it was totally made up, but take that for what it's worth.
I'm shocked that he remembers anything from that night.
But
point. Yeah, I think if you erase both of those negatives from the quarterback that is Chad Kelly, he might be a first rounder.
Yeah,
and he's maybe a more appealing option than Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah,
but obviously you can't take those things away from him. That's just that's the whole package of Chad Kelly.
Yep.
But he's an immensely talented quarterback, and he's got a great arm, and he can fit the ball into tight windows, and he's a winner. He beat Alabama once at Ole Miss, and he played nearly flawlessly in a loss last season.
Yeah.
So you kind of hope that the Broncos, being the successful organization that they are, and they have a good locker room culture, that they can minimize the character concerns and see if they can turn him into the best Mr. Irrelevant that we've seen since Ryan Suckup, the great Chiefs kicker.
I'll tell you what, like before we go on to the next topic, just real quick, is, you know, as a player, just and Eric Trickle would disagree with me on this, and he did a Broncos Found scouting report on Chad Kelly for our premium members. And for those of you who haven't taken the opportunity to join Mile High Huddle as a premium member, you want to check that out so you don't miss anything. We save our most in-depth content for our premium members. Costs $5 a month, and then we give back. You get 10% off on tickets through Ticket Monster. You get 10% off on Broncos team merchandise through Fanatics, the same store that the Broncos use, the NFL use for team merch, shirts, hats, jerseys, hoodies, you name it. But anyway, in Eric's piece on Chad Kelly, he's just not that high on him. Now, me, and I'll be the first one to admit, I'm no expert quarterback talent evaluator, but everything I saw from watching the tape of this kid in the biggest games, I mean, he is a quintessential gamer. You know, when the chips are down and you need the most out of your quarterback, that's when he shines. That's when he steps up, and he has the balls, he has the hubris, he has the confidence on the field to make those tight throws and to challenge the defense vertically. And he's mobile and he's tough-nosed. And I mean, there's a lot to like about him, especially as a competitor. And I think if he gets the opportunity to ply those wares at all under the preseason lights, he's definitely going to price himself out of the Broncos being able to just waive him and hope to get him on the practice squad.
Yeah, and I think the more questionable aspects of his character are kind of apparent in a good way on the field. Like, he is a risk taker,
yep,
and he's extremely confident, almost to the point of arrogance. But you kind of need that in the SEC, especially to beat a team like Alabama.
No doubt.
You can't beat Alabama unless you actually legitimately believe you can beat them. And Chad Kelly is one of the few quarterbacks that could actually pull that off. And so you want to see that. You kind of need that against a team like New England, or now a team like the Raiders.
Yeah.
So I think if you can harness that, like I said before, he is a very intriguing option going forward.
Definitely. Now, Denver's third-round pick, wideout Carlos Henderson, well, one of two third-rounders, but speaking specifically of Henderson, he's the only rookie from the 2017 draft class yet to sign his contract. Now, Henderson's camp is still negotiating some of the finer things, the workout bonus language basically in the contract, from what I've been told. And there's little wiggle room when it comes to negotiation in these slotted rookie deals. But for the picks drafted in that slot that Henderson was in the third round, there is some. And so, of course, the players and their reps are going to work to get as much money for their player out of the team as they possibly can. But what I like, Will, is that Henderson hasn't let that deter him from practicing with the team. He, in fact, signed a waiver so that he can still be out there with the team and not be held back in the learning the ropes, because rookies have little to no off season. And we heard Paxton Lynch, in fact, talk about how big the off season, how big of an impact that makes for the rookies. The very first time they get out of their rookie year, going into their second year, that offseason makes a huge difference. Rookies don't get that, and they need every meeting and every practice they can get before the preseason games kick off. Here's what he said really quick about the fact that he hasn't signed but is still practicing. He said, quote, "Yes, of course, I didn't sign yet, but like I said, I'm dedicated to this team. They spent their draft pick on me, so I'm dedicated to working hard and dedicated to playing football. I love football. I won't miss a workout or practice even though I'm not signed, because I'm that dedicated to helping the team by making sure I do whatever I have to do. I understand why I'm not signed. I don't handle that, but it'll work itself out." Closed quote. Honestly, I like this kid, Will. I mean, I like his character, but even more, I like what this kid, his skill set and what he can bring to the offense, and I can't wait to see him in action.
Yeah, it sounds like he's very dedicated.
I think so.
But another thing that we haven't seen since 2011, since the collective bargaining agreement is there's not a lot of rookie holdouts, just because where you are picked turns into this is what the average first round pick makes versus the second round. And there's not a lot of variability going on. The only thing that they can really negotiate is some of the contract language. And then that's why you didn't see Joey Bosa at the beginning of last season. But I'm not particularly worried about it with Carlos Henderson. And, we went through it. He signed a waiver to be on the field. And I think that's we talked about earlier how there's no contact in OTAs. Right. And this is one of the instances where I think that's a really good decision because if they were hitting and he hadn't signed his contract yet, I would be a little apprehensive for him.
Yeah, just a crazy risk.
Yeah, at that point, I don't know if you want to sign that waiver. But I do tend to take the player's side in the financial disputes.
Me too.
Except for certain players who wore number 2 and were drafted number 1 overall by the Oakland Raiders in 2007, not to name names.
Yep.
But the individual's career is so much more fragile, especially in the NFL, than the existence of the franchise and of the league, which are always going to be there, and the players come and go. But I am excited for Carlos Henderson. I think he was a really good pick in round 3. He's a really fast guy, and he led college football in broken tackles by a lot.
Yep, big time.
And I think he's finally the guy that we've been waiting for to complement Sanders and Thomas on the inside. And he's probably their best hope of having a good slot wide receiver since not really since Wes Welker left, but before Wes Welker either got hit one too many times or got arrested, or not arrested, but suspended for whatever he was doing at the Kentucky Derby.
The Molly incident. Making it rain.
Yeah, he and the boys, the Kentucky Derby, as one does. But so I'm looking forward to seeing if Carlos Henderson can fit that role. Yeah. And he's also, we haven't really talked about this yet, but he's in a battle to return kicks with about 3 other guys. So they took Brendan Lagley, also in the 3rd round, who was a cornerback out of Lamar. Right. And then they took Isaiah McKenzie in, I think, the 5th round out of Georgia.
Right. Yep.
He was a really prolific punt and kick returner. And they still have Khalif Raymond from Holy Cross, who took over for Jordan Norwood, returning kicks at the end of last year and did a pretty good job. Fumbled against the Chiefs, but I think overall he provided a little more juice than, especially more than Norwood was giving us. But it'll be interesting on both fronts to see if he can step in and become that 3rd option at wide receiver, and whether or not he's going to take over returning kicks or punts or just kickoffs or just punts. But they've got a lot wrapped up in Carlos Henderson. And so hopefully they can figure this out pretty soon and see what he's got on the field.
Yeah, I don't think it'll take too much longer. And for what it's worth, from what I've heard, he is going to factor into the competition as a returner. But if the Broncos have their druthers, they would like it to be someone other than Henderson because of their plans that they have for him on offense and not wanting to risk him, kind of in the same way you never saw Emmanuel Sanders out returning punts, even though he would have made the most sense. But we'll see. I still think they're looking for any kind of explosion they can get, and if that resolves itself in Carlos Henderson, so be it. Now, one last topic I want to talk about before we get out of here was something Paxton Lynch said at the podium on Tuesday. And really, since he's returned to Denver this offseason, there have been nothing but positive buzz coming out of Dove Valley. And basically, Lynch being more confident, more composed, knowing the playbook, even though it's a new system, really just night and day compared to what type of player he was when he arrived as a rookie. And I want you to hear what Lynch said about where he's at now compared to last year, just really quick.
To me, it's pretty different, but I feel like it fits more of how I play, and I'm more comfortable in it, and there's a little bit more similarities to what I did at Memphis compared to what I had to do last year. Obviously, what we've done at practice. We've gotten the gun a little bit more than last year, which is obviously more comfortable to me just because I've been doing it for so long. And last year was my first time getting under center. But the reps that I got last year and the time that I got to play and now coming into OTAs this year, I think that I've made pretty good strides.
Now, Will, I wouldn't go so far, and we touched on this a little bit earlier in the show. I wouldn't go so far as to call you, for example, a Simeon apologist, but I know you take exception to certain things when it comes to the Trevster.
Yeah.
I, conversely, have been pretty outspoken about my take on Lynch heading into year 2, and one thing I've really been saying since the day Denver drafted him was that once he acclimates to life as a pro and all that means, and he's not having to think so much, it won't take long for his natural ability to rise to the surface. Now, say what you will about him being kind of a goof and the perception that he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, and that's fine. But when it comes to physical tools and athletic gifts, and you talked about this yourself, Lynch really is head and shoulders, literally, above Simeon. And as a quarterback, I mean, Simeon just wins in different ways, and Simeon's skill set in and of itself is impressive. I take nothing away from the guy who was almost an afterthought 7th-round pick flyer to placate the head coach just 2 years ago. But with Lynch seeming to be assimilated to life as a professional quarterback, or at least getting there, Will, how do you think that portends for the upcoming quarterback competition overall?
Yeah, I think he's definitely making strides, and it's never bothered me that he is kind of a goof, and people have said that he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, like you brought up, but do you think Ben Roethlisberger is the sharpest tool in the shed?
Good point.
Or, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say Jameis Winston. Yeah, Eli's Eli, but and then you've got guys like Jameis Winston who are incredibly book smart, but off the field make some questionable decisions as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's necessarily a prerequisite for playing quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
And it definitely helps if you're Peyton Manning. But I think that's not a huge concern for Lynch. Like I said earlier, the big concerns are accuracy and consistency and getting a feel for the offense, and I guess learning the offense as well, which is kind of one of the big factors in this quarterback competition and where I think Simeon probably has an upper hand. But he's got to break the archetype of the project quarterback eventually. We all know he does have the physical skills, but he's got to put it together, and he can't be that guy who we keep saying year after year, well, he's the most talented quarterback, and he just hasn't showed it yet.
Yep, agreed.
But we're waiting for that.
Yep.
But I think the troubling part about Paxton Lynch's rookie season that we saw last year was he got a little bit worse every time we saw him. And it started with the Tampa Bay game where he came in relief of Simeon after he injured his shoulder and had to leave. And he played really, really well, especially given the circumstances of having to come in cold off the bench. And he kept the offense on schedule, and he was probably a little more explosive than Simeon had been to that point.
Yeah, and cutting loose, just kind of being himself, it felt like.
Right. And I remember you and I were talking after that game, and I think you thought, and I did a little bit too in the back of my head, that if Lynch can repeat that against the Falcons, you maybe don't give the ball back to Simeon,
right? And
you just ride it out with Paxton Lynch. But that wasn't the case. He didn't play terribly against the Falcons. That was a game where Vic Beasley, I think, abused Ty Sambrailo on the right side.
He basically gave Vic Beasley the Pro Bowl.
No, he did. That's true. I think he had like 4 sacks or something. It wasn't quite as bad as the Khalil Mack game,
right?
But I don't think anything's quite as bad as that. But he had a tough time in that game. Did better when they were down and were working out of a more up-tempo offense, which who knows what that means. But then the Jacksonville game, and he got from bad to worse. And it might have been a product of the game plan where the coaches told him, just don't screw up.
And that's what I've heard. I've heard a lot of that that was the message. Not necessarily that's what screwed him up, but that really was the message because the Broncos were still very much in the hunt So
yeah, I think that's just a poor way to coach, though. Don't you think?
I agree. Yeah, you never coach to. I mean, in anything you do, you just don't plan to fail. You assume success if you want to be successful.
Yeah, it's and this might just be a holdover from the Gary Kubiak regime, and we know Kubiak had kind of a thing for Simeon the whole time.
Oh yeah, a little soft spot.
Yeah, I'd say so. But it's not. It's a little bit of an indictment of Lynch to say just don't screw up, and we'll be okay because it's the Jaguars, and that's not what you want to put into a young quarterback's head. But I think if the new coaching staff and Vance Joseph as the leader of the team, and then especially Mike McCoy and then Bill Musgrave, the new quarterback's coach, they have to tell him to just rip it. Like, don't hold anything back. Paxton Lynch isn't the guy who's going to play conservatively, which is kind of one of the benefits, I think, that you get from Trevor Siemian, especially on a team like the Broncos that's built to win without an exceptional quarterback, is he doesn't make huge mistakes. But that's not what you drafted Paxton Lynch to be. You drafted him to be a playmaker at quarterback, essentially, and I think that's what you have to coach him to be, and not the guy who doesn't turn the ball over. If he turns the ball over, so what? Every young quarterback does.
It's going to happen.
Let him play. Let him figure it out for a little bit, and I think that's how you get the most out of him.
Absolutely. And it's going to be fun to see how it takes shape, but I think that's going to do it for today. Again, be sure to follow the show on Twitter, @HuddleUp_MHH. Thousands of you listen to the show every week, and we're a little bit north of 300 followers on Twitter, so there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. Hook us up, help us out. Make sure you're following the show on Twitter. You can find Will Keys himself in the Twitterverse @WillKeys6 and myself @ChadNJensen, and of course also @MileHighHuddle. We love hearing from you, so hit us up, and as always, we'll try to address your questions and your concerns on the show as often as we can. And don't forget to subscribe, y'all. For Will, I'm Chad. We'll talk to you soon.
Mile High Huddle.